Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ ابْنَيْ آدَمَ بِالْحَقِّ. Tell them the story of the two children of Adam alayhi salam. Adam had many children, although we don't know exactly the number, but he had many children, among whom were Qabil and Habil, or in English, Abel and Cain. And a dispute arose between Abel and Cain, as the Quran says. However, the Quran doesn't mention what that dispute was. Now, what you commonly hear is that Abel had a beautiful wife that Cain wanted, and Cain's wife was less pretty, so they had an argument and they had a dispute who gets to marry who. And so they said, okay, let's go ahead and let Allah determine who should marry who He prefers. And they'll do that by presenting a qurban, a type of sacrifice. And whoever a lightning strikes, we will take as that is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses. Now, these details, what exactly was presented, why they presented it, what the dispute was, we don't have any information, any authentic information in Quran and Sunnah. And what you normally hear tends to be taken from the stories of the previous religions. But what we can say is that there was some sort of dispute between Qabil and Habil that seems to revolve around a type of jealousy. And to get that resolved, they present, as I mentioned, they present a sacrifice to Allah, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically makes it clear who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefers. As the verse says, إِذْ قَرَّبَا قُرْبَانًا فَتُقُبِّلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنَ الْآخَرِ. They presented their sacrifice and it was accepted from one and it wasn't accepted from the other. Now, what's very important to understand about the wording of the Quran, the way it's worded, it was accepted from one and it wasn't accepted from the other, basically suggests, had the other done it right, it would have been accepted from both of them. And why this is important, because one of the huge struggles of the human being and one of the attack points of Iblis is your jealousy, envy. So many people envy others, and that envy can drive them mad. It can drive them to do very, very vicious things, even murder. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating a type of mindset in the mind of a believer. Just because it was accepted from one does not mean Allah can't accept it from someone else. In other words, just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave someone something that you want doesn't mean He can't give it to you as well. Well, you can both get it. And therefore, jealousy is something that a believer is capable to keep at bay. Yes, it's part of the human experience. It's quite natural. But we have to tame it. We have to keep it at bay. We cannot allow it to influence our decisions. And it starts off in this lesson, in the story of Qabil and Habil, by basically saying, Allah can accept from all of you. And He can give all of you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wealth is infinite. There's no limit to it. And so He provides those and He provides others. But compare that to the political mindset of scarcity in resources. That if some other country has wealth, then that means what I can gain and what I can acquire is limited. And so we must pillage, we must purge, we must rob, we must steal, we must oppress. We must make sure that no other country is financially stable, because somehow if they're financially okay, their economies are strong, that's going to harm our economies. The mindset of the believer is Allah can provide everyone everything they wanted. He could. And so the believer doesn't approach things with this scarcity mindset, but rather he approaches it as the verse continues. And Habil mentions and tells Qabil, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. The reason why Allah accepted from me has nothing to do with me per se. It has nothing to do with what I offered, but rather it has to do with the intention, why I offered it. I tried to do it from the background of taqwa, whereas you try to do it in competition with me, in jealousy of me. So Allah accepted it from me because of taqwa. And had you behaved with taqwa, He would have accepted it from you. This is a very beautiful point, dear brother and sister. Value of the human being, once again, it goes back to your relationship with Allah. And the human being the believer pursues things through taqwa. Allah accepted from Habil because he presented out of taqwa. And he didn't accept it from Qabil because it was out of jealousy, it was out of a worldly pursuit, it was out of envy. But had Qabil presented it with taqwa, then Allah would have accepted it from him and from Habil simultaneously. So the believer does not put themselves at the level where they start competing with other human beings over worldly things. A believer is somebody who's not influenced by their own jealousy, even though they might feel it. But rather, what pushes them to make decisions is what? Is their taqwa. Now, Qabil, his jealousy got the best of him. His jealousy drove him mad to the extent that he killed his brother. And his brother Habil, he kind of sensed this when Qabil threatened him, right? And says, لَإِن بَسَطْتَ إِلَيَّ يَدَكَ لِتَقْتُلَنِي مَا أَنَا بِبَاسِطِ يَدِيَ إِلَيْكَ لِأَقْتُلَكَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Habil tells his brother, if you try to kill me, I'm not going to retaliate by killing you. Why? Because I fear Allah. I'm going to go back to Allah. I'm accountable for this. I'd rather be murdered than return to Allah as a murderer. I'd rather go back to Allah with a clean slate than have to clarify and justify why I killed you. It's too much for me. Now, aside from self-defense and the fiqh rulings in that regard, what I want us to focus on is the following. How do we react to people who are behaving aggressively and, in a lewd way or an improper way towards us? Yes, Islam doesn't promote turning the other cheek, but rather it promotes ihsan, excellence. And sometimes excellence is by pushing back. And other times excellence is by not getting yourself involved in these petty matters. So if what you see happening is very petty, fighting over a few dollars, fighting over a place in a stadium, fighting over a car, these are petty in the mind of a believer. I'm not going to put myself down to that level and start behaving in an aggressive way because of these petty worldly things. But rather what guides me is what I think will be best for me in the afterlife. So Qabil kills his brother Habil, and now he needs to bury him. And the end result of this, as the Quran says, فَأَصْبَحَ مِنَ النَّادِمِينَ. Qabil felt guilty, and he continued to deal with that anxiety of guilt. And by the way, it doesn't seem like this guilt is a healthy spiritual type of guilt. Something, I can't believe I messed up. Oh Allah, please forgive me. It just seems like he regretted his decision, but it didn't go further than that. Now imagine living a life where you constantly feel this regret. Adam alayhi salam, his father, where's Habil? Where did he go? And Qabil knows that he killed him, but he can't tell his father that I killed him and all of this. Imagine that. So look at how jealousy, Iblis fomented Qabil's jealousy so much so that it ended up with him killing his brother. So the believer takes the lessons from this story. Don't get jealous and apply what the Prophet ﷺ says. When it comes to your iman, look at those who have stronger iman than you so that you take inspiration and guidance from that. But when you look at worldly things, you want to compare what you have with others, look at people who have less than you. That tames the jealousy. Another major lesson is value and self-worth. We don't know exactly what Qabil and Habil presented for their sacrifice, but some narrations or some stories say that Qabil presented the most valuable of things, while Habil was poorer than Qabil and presented, very modest things. And so when Allah accepted from Habil and rejected from Qabil, that just drove him mad. I presented the better things. Why are you accepting that? Now, if this is a correct interpretation of what happened, there's a very valuable lesson here. And what is that lesson? How do you place value to things? Well, the believer doesn't place value on things based on its monetary value, based on how much humans value it or how much it's worth in the market. But rather, value is given to taqwa. And so the Prophet ﷺ teaches us, it could be that somebody giving $1 in charity will get more reward than somebody who gave $1,000 in charity. How so? Well, one of the factors is the heart. Why did you give charity? What was going on in your heart when you gave that charity? Somebody who gives $1 in charity, but it comes out of the utmost humility, love of Allah, hope in Allah, will get much more reward than somebody who gives $1 million, but that $1 million comes from a sense of, wow, I have $1 million. And so the Muslim learns how to place proper value on things, and it has nothing to do with how fancy a car is or how large a home is or what kind of a degree or status or position a person has. But it has everything to do with a person's heart and their relationship with Allah. So the Prophet teaches us that perhaps there is somebody who, when people look at them, they are dusty and dirty. Their clothes are old and worn out. Their hair is dirty. They barely take showers because they don't have access to water. They're that poor. They have such an austere image in the eyes of people that people won't even hold the door open for them if they're coming in a door. As the Prophet ﷺ says, they might even push that person out of the store because they think they're a homeless, meaningless person. The Prophet says that person, if they make an oath by Allah, Allah will make it happen in honor of that individual. In other words, there are people out there who are living extremely humble lives, but to Allah, they are the most valuable of people. And one companion, radiallahu ta'ala an, the Prophet came joking with him. He came from behind him and grabbed him like this. And he started saying, who will buy the slave? The Prophet is joking with him. But the man said, Ya Rasulullah, nobody cares about me. I mean, I'm not a popular person, a respected person in society. If you try and sell me in the market, you'll barely get anything for me. In fact, people won't even buy me. And then the Prophet responded and said, but to Allah, you are of high value. So the believer, as a human being, it's important to know what is truly valuable. What is valuable are good deeds. What is valuable is taqwa. What is valuable is your relation with Allah. But what isn't valuable are monetary possessions, worldly possessions, worldly luxuries and conveniences, vacations, and all of these things that people pursue and put all of their time and energy to enjoy. The believer is like Habil, who says, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah accepts from a person of taqwa. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khair for watching. Please share this khair and let other people benefit from the lessons, and support this masjid by becoming one of its sustainers.